I can still remember the exact moment I realized something inside my family had shifted for good. It was last Thanksgiving when my mom casually announced that my cousin Dylan would be temporarily moving into my old room, without asking me, without warning, and without even pretending my opinion mattered. She said it while passing me the mashed potatoes like it was nothing. But to me, it felt like I'd just been quietly erased from my own home. I'm 24 and still living with my mom and stepdad while I finish my certification program. It's not glamorous, but it's temporary, and I've been pulling my weight, paying rent, doing repairs, handling groceries when they're busy. I figured we were all in a good place. We didn't fight much. We mostly kept to our routines and respected each other's space. But over the past year, small things with my mom started feeling off. She'd forget to tell me about family plans until the last minute. She'd brush off my ideas or subtly correct me in conversations like she was embarrassed by me. My stepdad would step around me like I was part of the furniture. None of it was loud or dramatic, just little cuts that didn't bleed but still hurt. Then came Dylan. Dylan and I were never close. He's the type of guy who coasts through life because someone else always catches him. He's bounced between jobs, couches, relationships, and mild projects that never actually happen. Every time he crashed, someone in the family handed him a pillow. This time, apparently, it was my mom's turn. I found out through a group chat later that everyone else already knew about the move. They'd been discussing it for weeks. Meanwhile, I was the person losing a bedroom, privacy, and half my space. And I was the last one to know. When I asked my mom why she didn't mention it earlier, she gave me the sort of tight smile she uses when she thinks I'm being dramatic. "It's not a big deal," she said. "You're barely here anyway. And Dylan needs help." Barely here? I paid rent. I cleaned. I literally fixed the dryer last month so we wouldn't need a repairman. But arguing with her felt pointless. Every sentence she threw back at me had this quiet undertone of, "He needs more than you do. Stop complaining." The next days were worse. Dylan walked in like he owned the place. He dropped his duffel bags in my doorway, called the room cozy, and joked that it smelled like productivity, whatever that meant. He asked if I could temporarily move my desk to the living room so he could set up his stuff. Mom overheard and didn't say a word. I kept noticing new ways I was being nudged aside. My groceries disappeared faster. The bathroom was always occupied. My mom started defending him before I even spoke. When I suggested a schedule for chores or shared spaces, she told me I was making things weird. And the weirdest part? Dylan acted like he was doing me a favor by being there. One night he told me he could teach me some things about networking if I wanted. I don't even know what that meant, but the smugness in his voice made my jaw clench. The tension built slowly, like steam under a lid. No huge blow-ups, just constant small reminders that my comfort came last. The shift hit a breaking point when I came home one evening and found Dylan sitting at my computer, my personal laptop, typing like he owned it. When he noticed me, he didn't even look embarrassed. "Oh, relax," he said. "Your mom said it was fine." Something snapped inside me then. Not loud, not visible, but definite. A quiet click. Because in that moment, I realized two things. First, my family wasn't just overlooking me. They were actively choosing convenience over basic respect. Second, if I didn't draw a line soon, there wouldn't be any space left for me at all. And that was the moment I knew I wasn't going to let this slide. Not anymore. The day after I caught Dylan on my laptop, things got worse in a way that didn't feel accidental. My files were rearranged, a few work documents were missing. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make me question if it was intentional or if he really was just that careless. Either way, it didn't matter. My things weren't safe anymore, and my mom didn't seem to care. When I brought it up to her, she sighed like I was exhausting. "Why is everything a battle with you lately?" she said. I stared at her, stunned. A battle? He was the one crossing lines, not me. She kept going. "You know Dylan's had a rough year. He needs stability. Don't make the house tense for him." So now I was the problem. Not the guy who treated the place like a hostel. Not the guy who helped himself to my food and my computer. Me. The worst part was how quickly my stepdad jumped onto her side. He'd never taken a strong stance before, but suddenly he was chiming in with, "It's just temporary. and cut him some slack. It was like the two of them had found a new hobby, correcting me in unison. Over the next week, the disrespect got bolder. Dylan started inviting people over without asking. He used my chargers, my towels, my shampoo. When I confronted him, he smirked and said, "We're family. Why are you so territorial?" Family. Funny word coming from someone who'd barely acknowledged me at holidays before this. One night I came home to find my desk chair in the hallway, my desk shoved against the opposite wall, and Dylan's things spread across it like a command center. My mom was helping him organize. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "You still have plenty of space." I felt something burn in my chest. Not anger, clarity, because it became obvious what was actually happening. Dylan wasn't the only issue. My mom had been inching me out for months before he arrived. He just made it easier for her to pretend it was reasonable. That night, the breaking point finally hit. I overheard them in the kitchen, my mom, my stepdad, and Dylan, talking about how maybe it was time I started looking for my own place. My mom said it gently, like she was worried about me. Dylan said it like he was making a business recommendation. They didn't know I was standing in the hallway. My mom said, "He's old enough, and he's been moody lately. It might be healthy for him to branch out." Moody. I wasn't moody. I was being slowly forced out of my own home while paying rent. When Dylan chimed in with, "I can help you guys clean out the rest of his stuff so we have more space," something inside me went cold. Ice cold. Not rage, not hurt. Just final. These people weren't looking out for me. They weren't even pretending anymore. They were planning around my absence like it was a done deal. After that, I stopped reacting. No more arguing. No more asking for explanations. No more calling out disrespect. I went quiet, which they interpreted as sulking, but it wasn't. I'd reached the point where staying passive was no longer weakness. It was planning, because if they thought pushing me out would be simple, they were about to learn that the moody one, the one they underestimated, was done playing along. I started paying attention, listening, watching who said what, tracking who used what space, who relied on what, who slipped up when they thought I wasn't around. And under all the noise, one thing became crystal clear. If my mom and Dylan wanted to treat me like a temporary inconvenience in my own home, then it was time to show them what temporary really looked like. Once I stopped reacting, the house got weirdly comfortable. For them, not for me. Dylan acted like my silence meant he'd won, and my mom seemed relieved that I'd finally stopped making things tense. It was almost funny how quickly people relax when they think you've given up. I hadn't given up. I just stopped fighting battles that weren't worth fighting. My plan wasn't dramatic. It didn't involve traps or screaming or anything that would make a good movie scene. It was quiet, methodical, and based on one simple truth. If they wanted me gone so badly, they could live with the actual consequences. First thing I did was stop paying for anything that wasn't legally tied to my name. Rent? Yes. My portion of utilities? Yes. Groceries, cleaning supplies, random household stuff I'd always picked up without thinking? No. That responsibility magically shifted to Dylan and my mom, who were both shocked by how expensive basic things actually were. I also changed the password on my laptop, backed everything up, and kept it in my room when I wasn't using it. The look on Dylan's face when he tried to open it and realized it was locked was priceless. He complained to my mom, who tried to guilt me into being generous. I just said, "It's private, like yours." She didn't have a comeback for that. Next, I requested a full written rental agreement from my mom and stepdad. Nothing dramatic, just a simple, formal document outlining my rights as a tenant and exactly what space I was entitled to use. They were confused, then annoyed, then uncomfortable. But once something is put on paper, it becomes real in a way that casual disrespect can't touch. When Dylan realized he couldn't borrow my desk anymore because it was explicitly listed as part of my private space, he sulked around the house, acting like he'd lost a family heirloom. Then came the big quiet move. I'd been saving money for months, working side gigs, planning for independence. What they didn't know was that I already had an approved rental application for a small studio apartment across town. I just hadn't signed the final paperwork yet. Instead of telling them, I let the house run exactly as it was for 2 more weeks. During that time, I documented everything. Who used my things? Who took my food? How often Dylan stayed over the agreed limit? How many times they entered my room without permission? Not for revenge in a courtroom sense, for closure, for proof to myself that I wasn't imagining the disrespect. Then on a Wednesday morning, I signed the lease during my lunch break. I waited until Friday night, when they were all home, to execute the final part of my plan. Dylan was in the living room playing some loud game on his phone. My mom was folding laundry. My stepdad was watching TV. They barely glanced up when I walked in. I kept my voice calm. I'll be moving out tomorrow morning. The silence was instant. My mom blinked rapidly. Tomorrow? That's sudden. It's healthy for me to branch out, I said, using her exact words from the kitchen. She flushed. My stepdad stared at the TV like it suddenly became fascinating. Dylan snorted under his breath, trying to hide a smile. You know, he said, it's probably for the best. You've been... He didn't finish his sentence, because I placed a neat envelope on the coffee table. Inside were copies of the rental agreement, bank transfer receipts, and a list of items they'd taken and used without my permission. Nothing accusatory, just facts. I'll be forwarding this to the landlord as well, I said, so they're aware I've fulfilled all my obligations as a tenant. It hit them like a slow-moving wave. Nothing dramatic, just dawning understanding. This wasn't me getting pushed out. This was me leaving on my terms, and every piece of evidence showed exactly why. That night, no one spoke to me. They weren't angry. They were uncomfortable, uncertain. They'd wanted me gone, but not like this. Not in a way that highlighted how much they'd relied on me. The revenge wasn't loud. It was the simple reality of removing myself and letting the balance shift without me there to hold it up. And the real fallout? That was coming next. I moved out early the next morning, before anyone woke up. My car was already packed. Clothes, laptop, desk lamp, a few books, and the essentials I actually cared about. It didn't take long. Most of the house never really felt like mine anyway. When I closed the door behind me, the air felt lighter. Not triumphant, not dramatic, just clean, like finishing a long, uncomfortable conversation you've rehearsed for months. I didn't hear from anyone for the first 2 days. On day 3, the text started. First from my mom. Why did you leave so suddenly? We could have talked. I stared at the message for a while. We had talked. I'd been talking for months. They just didn't listen until my absence inconvenienced them. I replied politely but briefly, telling her I was settling in fine and needed space. She didn't love that, but she didn't push it, at least not right away. A week later came the second wave of fallout, this time from Dylan. He called me, sounding irritated and confused. Hey, your mom said we need to start splitting grocery costs now. And utilities. Do you think she's serious? I almost laughed. For years, I'd quietly carried those extras without complaint because it kept the peace. Without me there, everything was suddenly visible. I told him, yeah, she's serious. That's what adults do. He didn't appreciate the answer. The real surprise came the following weekend when my stepdad messaged me. Not angrily, but awkwardly. He asked if I still had the contact information for the guy who serviced our HVAC system. I did, but I also knew what that question meant. The house wasn't running smoothly anymore. Chores weren't getting done. Bills weren't being managed. Minor repairs weren't magically disappearing. All the invisible work I used to do had become visible, and the imbalance they'd ignored for so long finally shifted back onto them. 2 weeks after I left, my mom asked if we could meet. Not at the house, somewhere neutral. We ended up at a small diner near my new place. She looked tired. Not sick, not stressed. Just tired in a way that comes from realizing something uncomfortable but true. She said, I didn't realize how much you were doing. Not until it stopped. I didn't rub it in. I didn't list examples. I didn't bring up the laptop or the groceries or the conversations in the kitchen. I just let her talk. She apologized. Quietly, sincerely, without excuses. She admitted she'd let Dylan take over too much, and that some part of her had assumed I would always adjust, always bend. I treated you like you were temporary, she said, and you weren't. It wasn't a movie moment. There were no tears, just honesty, and it was enough. As for Dylan, he didn't apologize. He avoided me entirely, which honestly worked in everyone's favor. I later heard he moved out after 3 months because he didn't vibe with the house rules, which was code for adult responsibilities were inconvenient. The house settled after that. My mom and I talk more now. Healthy distance, better boundaries. She asks questions instead of making decisions for me. She doesn't assume I'll pick up the slack just because it's easier for her if I do. And me? I've been living in my studio for months now. It's small, quiet, and mine. Every dish in the sink is mine. Every light left on is mine. Every bill paid is mine. And that independence, earned, not forced, feels like the real revenge. Not the petty kind, not the dramatic kind. The kind where you reclaim your life and the people who underestimated you are left to confront the empty space you used to fill. If there's any moral to what happened, it's this. Sometimes the strongest revenge is stepping away, not to punish them, but to finally take care of yourself.